2414 is a podcast about finding hope and common ground through casual conversation. Like the friends on the road in the New Testament, in Luke chapter 24, verse 14, we want to walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. Thanks for walking with us.
Hey, welcome to 2414. I'm Dan. That's Brenda. That's David. Welcome, viewers, listeners, longtime subscribers, people who thought they were downloading something else. We are glad you're here. Today we're having a conversation about something that we're experiencing here at St. Luke's called Forward Together, looking at what it means that we are a people experiencing life together and going forward as a congregation. Maybe this is your church. Maybe you are part of a different congregation. Maybe you have no church at all. But I hope the conversation today about experiencing community and how we need each other and can serve and love one another well. I hope that's going to be edifying for you, whoever you are. So we always kick off highs and lows. Brenda, you're our longtime friend of the show. David, you were here with me last time, had some good conversation. Mm-hmm. We'll be gentlemen, give Brenda a little extra time to think. Is that a loving thing to do? I don't know.
Sure.
Not that Brenda needs it. Maybe David needs more extra time to think.
No, I'm good. I got it.
Okay, so David, a high, high and a low, and the question of the day is: do you have a favorite Christmas movie?
Yeah, I do, but it's
all right.
I just don't know if it's like the Christmas movie.
It doesn't have to be. This is a safe place.
This is your favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah, it's Christmas Vacation, Chevy Chase, and yeah, it's a bit, I wouldn't watch it with a 5-year-old, but it's good. It's funny. It's really funny. And we used to watch that. Sorry, Mom. We used to watch that when we were putting up the Christmas ornaments, and I was pretty young, but good stuff. Got memories attached to it, which I think is a big part of anything Christmas. Has to be good. Has to have some memories attached to it. So has that nostalgia. It's hilarious, and I think it's aged well. I showed it to my wife for the first time last year, and she liked it, which
that's dangerous with a lot of old movies.
It is, because it's like, this could have been funny, and now I still think it's funny because I used to like it, but she had never seen it before, but she liked it. So it's good.
Low and a high. How's today? How's the week?
Yeah, so low was kind of interesting to talk about, especially in the nature of this podcast, but just having to do budget stuff this month because student loans have come up again. And I did take the pause. I tried not to take the pause, but I needed a new car, and student loans or a car payment. Didn't have to pay the student loans, so I took it. But when they came back at probably, my guess is almost twice as much what I owe on a monthly basis. I don't know how that worked out. It got sold to a different company so the interest rates went up, and so it was a lot more than we were expecting. We knew they were coming back in October. So just trying to you look at the budget, then you look at it again, and the money doesn't magically just grow. When you're looking away, it's like, it's not like boiling water. Looking away doesn't do anything. So having to consider what that looks like in terms of saving for the summer as well, because Greta's work right now is part-time.
You're okay.
Went out for a second, at least on my end. So budget stuff just is it takes a long time. It's a lot of details, and it's, but I think we talked really well about it. We work well as a team when we both sit down and take the project seriously. So that's good.
It's not like a stressful conversation for both of you to talk.
It's not stressful in terms of talking with each other so much. Just the subject itself is stressful. And there are emotions tied into it. It's like, well, I think that this needs to be this much money versus this. And it's hard to still newly married, still within our first year, navigating stuff like that, and taking on an additional large sum of monthly payments when it's not like we were swimming in it beforehand either, right? That's been a low for sure. And then our cat also doesn't help with all the vet visits that he requires. So if anyone wants a barn cat listening, folks, He is people friendly. He never attacks me, but he's I'm just saying, I'm going to put that out there. Someone wants a barn cat listening in, I have one for you.
All right.
Sounds like it clearly comes at a low cost.
Yeah, he just needs territory without another cat in it. So, or else he will fight.
and not necessarily prevail.
And he does not win, but he doesn't run away either, according to the vet. He's like, he has no retreat wounds. So he just engages in the fight. Hi, though. We got to go to Bend, and Greta has family down there, so we stayed down there with them. And Bend's beautiful, of course. If you haven't been, central, eastern Oregon, got a view of the Cascade Range, the Sisters, Mount Jefferson. Went on a hike. Greta got to ride a horse. So it was good. Her aunt owns a horse, and so Greta got to ride a horse down there, and which is always a high for her. And it was good. Just spending time with family, cooking with them. We didn't really go out to eat or anything like that. We just stayed home and cooked. And her uncle's an amazing cook as well, so that's always kind of fun. And yeah, it's a good time.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I think for me, my low and high are kind of complements to each other. A lot of things I could celebrate and probably grieve together, but one joy this weekend is we had a cross country meet. I help coach and watch little kids and encourage them. So I ran 4 miles just scurrying around and warming them up. But this group of boys they're 11, 12-year-old boys, and some of them have been running together since they were 7. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 5 years, and cross country and track. So 2 seasons a year for 5 years. So yeah, that's more than half their lifetime. I mean, it's pretty close. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So what was really fun is they had a good race, but they're just little buddies. They just love each other, and they're so generous and fun together. And we had a new young man join our club in October, and so he doesn't have 5 years of 2 seasons of experience, and he's just part of the gang. So within a month and a half, he's just one of the boys, and they're so good to each other. So that was really just delightful to see that very intimate community. And they're also just little, I'm giving them their talk, and we're doing the course preview, and it's all these fine details, like how are we going to take this turn, and I want you to accelerate here, and heart rates and all, like pace details. Like these kids are dialed in. We can run a lap around the track, 400 meters, and say, all right, I want to do this one in 95 seconds. All right, that was a little easy. Let's do 93 seconds. And like they got it. And so they're so dialed in, but they're also just like leaves, and like that's a puddle, and they're just splashing. So that's super silly. And then out of that cross country meet, we went home, and we got home 1 or 2 maybe. And then we had the rest of the day free. And this is kind of my, like, backing into my low was on the way home. I realized, we don't have a next thing we have to go to. And I was like, I don't know the last time I felt this feeling of I just have a few hours without a thing. Like I have to immediately, race through the shower, or even here at the office, I'm quite literally running out to my car for the next meeting because I tried to squeeze in one more conversation or email, and then racing home for dinner. I'm like texting Charlotte on the way home, like, all right, I'll be home at about 5:07. I want to be out the door by 5:25 to beat traffic. And then it's just like get to practice, shower, go to bed. And so having 4-5 hours uninterrupted was exceptional. So like that was a high, but also like that probably shouldn't be totally out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
So it almost revealed a low of how long has my streak been of just nonstop. So anyway, that's kind of a weird low, I guess. Christmas movies, I don't go for some of the older sentimental ones. I think Elf is probably one of my go-to ones.
Yep.
That's a good one.
There's so many scenes. I know what's coming, and I still laugh every time. I think about when she's singing "Baby It's Cold Outside," and she like yells at him to get out, and he just runs right into the lockers. I like belly laugh every single time. I could watch it twice a Christmas season, and I'm gonna laugh every time. So That's one of my go-tos. And then his boss is like, "Why are you smiling? Smiling's my favorite." Make work your favorite. Work's your new favorite. Just like some of the lines are just so good every time. All right, Brenda, over to you. Lows, highs,
Okay.
Christmas movie.
I'll start with the movie because it's the same movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite scene or a moment?
I don't know that I have a favorite scene, but the one that you were just talking about, I think what makes me laugh is just that he starts singing, like is just in there listening to her singing. She's taking a shower. He's like, I'm just going to join in and harmonize with her. No, but that's one that doesn't get old. And I don't know when it came out, but I think in high school,
Early 2000s, I think.
yeah,
I don't
math class, Christmas time, like every year,
I remember seeing it
8
in
class is
theaters.
going to put it in school. So like we'd watch it. So, and it doesn't get old. It's just fun. It's funny. That's my favorite. Highs and lows, I think for me are also a little bit tied together. I got to go to San Jose this weekend and see my family. I have not seen them since our wedding last year in June. So about a year and a half since I've seen them. So, and it was really quick. It was a 2-night thing, but had really, really good quality time. My dad has moved out of San Jose, so it was a little bit more of like figuring out logistics of, okay, when we're at mom's house, we're here, but now it's not just a 10-minute drive. Now we're driving 30 minutes without traffic to his new place. So we had to split our time a little bit, but overall, really good. I think the only low out of it is that there's always inevitable, like, slight family drama, at least just a little bit, just mixing personalities. And we saw some other family friends and same thing. Like, sometimes they just make comments and like, that's really rude. But they don't think that it is. I'm like, so sometimes I think, yeah, it's probably good that I don't live in San Jose. Like, go to visit family, go see people for short amounts of time, and then come back home.
Yeah.
And a little distance is good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Did any favorite foods when you're in town, either home cooking or restaurants?
I was going to say, that's basically all we do. My mom's love language, I think, is feeding people.
Okay.
So literally we are full to bursting and she wants Adam to keep eating.
Yep.
Like, it's like if he doesn't eat more, it's like saying he didn't like it, or I don't know if she thinks I'm starving him or he doesn't eat at home, but she's like, here's this and this. I'm like, Mom, he doesn't want any more. Like, he's full. She's like, oh, but don't you like this one dish? I'm like, yes, he likes it, but he just can't eat anymore. And same at my parents. So my mom made tamales special for us. So we got to eat that, and something called gorditas, which is just like a dough thing. You flatten it kind of like a tortilla, but then you cut it open and you can stuff it with whatever. So some of them were beans, some of them were chicken, and some of them were picadillo, which is like ground beef and potatoes. Okay. So she makes all that stuff special when we're there. My sister jokes, she used to get mad. She's like, she doesn't do all this for me on a daily basis, but only when you guys
It's like
come.
the prodigal son. I've been here the whole time. You didn't have a party for me. You kill the fattened calf.
But now she's like, well, it's okay because I got to eat it first and there will be leftovers for days. So it's fine now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
David, do you have somebody like that in your life who feeds
well,
at that level?
Well, I was laughing about what you said about Adam, and just like they're forcing more food. I remember staying with the family in high school with my I stayed there with a few friends, and it was a Han Chinese and Vietnamese family, and great food, home cooking, so good. And I was a teenage boy, so I could put down quite a lot, but it just started being too much. And our friend Gina, who speaks Chinese or speaks Mandarin, and she had to like argue with them that like, no, my friends are full, and they're like, no, they're so skinny, and then they start getting like this argument in Chinese, and we're like looking at Gina like, please make him stop. Like, we love the food, we don't want to say no. Like, we tried to come into the house really quietly once so they wouldn't like see us because we just couldn't eat anymore. And like, it didn't work. They always found us. It was so good, the food was so good, but I just like, it's hard to say no sometimes. At least in that culture it was. So yeah,
That's awesome.
it was great.
Well, thank you both for sharing. Forward Together is the name of this little mini series, and it's connected to something we're doing here at St. Luke's. November is a season where we often take a few weeks and pause and look a little more intentionally with some focus on finances and what it means to steward the gifts that God has entrusted to us, and look around at our ministry context, look forward to where we're going, where we believe God is leading not just the congregation, but each of us as part of the body of Christ. And our two concrete goals for this season is looking forward. We want to reduce our mortgage debt by an additional $100,000, and together we want to have 400 individuals participate in that. And those are big goals.
Yeah, they are.
We've been kind of talking about it as a staff for a while. We've shared it with the congregation, maybe just to kind of open things up. How have those goals sounded in your heads, or if you've talked about it with your spouses? How are you thinking about $100,000 and 400 people participating?
I think it's almost a little bit harder to picture the money part of it, just because what is $100,000? When you think about numbers, like, what does that number mean to me? I don't have $100,000. So just to picture how much money that actually is. But then 400 people to participate in it, I'm like, that seems very doable to me. Like, we've got a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, David? What are you thinking?
I mean, maybe we talked about this last time. I like that it's the mortgage for all the reasons that you said in your sermon on Sunday. It's not flashy, and that's what I like about it, because it gets to, I think, the sacrificial nature of giving that we wanted to talk about. That this is something that's hard to see the benefit of in the moment, and you may never see the benefit of.
Like personally.
Yeah. But it will benefit people, and people will be blessed by what we do here a number of years down the road. I don't know how many years this mortgage is planned to pay out, and this shorten that time by a little bit if we meet our goals. But yeah, I think however many 10, 20 years from now, people will be thankful, like, oh, we have we're done with this, and we have a staff position's worth of interest that we're not paying, and just these. So the idea of, it's not very exciting now, but it's an investment for the future. And I just think of all the things that we benefit from, that people that I have never met put together and worked for our benefit. So, yeah.
Yeah, even stepping into the church today, I was kind of more aware of how much we've received, or I've received. I wasn't here when they paved this parking lot. I wasn't here when they built the building. I don't know who applied for permits, and just all the labor that went into labor, finances, prayers, sacrifice. And on a Sunday morning, we just step in, and there's a stained glass window, and there's a beautiful altar, and there's pews, and there's speakers, and there's lights. And
a lot of the people that sacrificed and made all of this happen aren't here anymore either to enjoy it.
Yeah.
We are benefiting from it.
Yeah, so some probably are, and some have probably, many have died. Not probably, many have died, and they didn't get to see. We've got so many people who are here, and new people. And this Sunday, hold that thought, David, I don't want you to lose it. But this Sunday I looked out on the church, and I don't know how to say this in not a weird way. It was probably the most diverse Sunday that I could remember at St. Luke's. Just people from different ethnicities, nations, languages, different clothing styles. It was beautiful. And it's a picture of what heaven's going to be and what God calls us to in the Great Commission of Jesus. And I got to see it with my eyes, in part because of people who didn't get to see it, who gave anyway and supported it. And so they didn't get to see the fruit of that. Maybe all they saw was a bunch of German immigrants, and we know Jesus sent us to the nations, and we think this building is going to be useful for that. And they maybe never saw it. But this Sunday I got to see something beyond. You had a thought, David? Sorry.
Yeah, at my old church, my first call, Trinity, we didn't have a lot of art up in the church at all, and it was kind of random what we did have. It's like, how'd this get decided to be? But one photo that we had, the only photograph that we had in the church, was of the adult members of the church when the new building, the new sanctuary was built. And if you're listening, you don't see I'm putting quotation marks. The new sanctuary was 1948 when that was completed, 48 or 49. I think it was 48 when the foundation was laid. And when I got there, out of all the people in that photo, only one was still alive, and they were in a care facility at the time and not very aware of what was going on around them. And so, and they had added on to the building since then, but where we did the majority of our time together as a church was a gift completely from people that I, the pastor of the church, had never met. Ever. I met the one lady once that was still alive from the photo. And a lot of them were relations to people in the church. So, they knew them, and it felt like a generational connection for the church, more or less. It felt like a family photo, having that up there. It's like, oh, yeah, this is my cousin. This is my grandfather. And, so, yeah, for me, that was a visual that kind of drove home that point of intergenerational giving and care. And it was a beautiful sanctuary. And thank you for the people who put it together after they came home with their checks from World War II, essentially, and put it together into a church.
Yeah.
So,
Brenda, last time David and I were talking, we shared a little bit about how we learned about giving or first gave in a kind of charitable offering sort of sense, and be curious to hear how that looked for you, and if you and Adam have had a conversation of how is that different or similar, and now that you're married, how long have you guys been married?
A little over 3 years.
Okay, a little over 3 years.
Yeah.
So David's just under 1. Charlotte and I are 18 and a half. She just sounds old. I feel like we're the same age, by the way. And then I say things like that. I'm like, we're not. Anyway, so I'm curious.
Freshman in college.
What's that?
It's like a freshman in college in age.
Yeah, we have an adult marriage. Yeah.
Adult marriage.
I think Rebecca's like, your marriage is an adult. I'm like, that's okay. It's coming of age. Anyway, so curious how your background, if you know any of Adam's, and then, the mix of what that looks like today.
Yeah. I actually have not asked Adam what that was like for him or his family growing up, although I know that they went to church, but I don't know if they gave or what that was like or who in the family gave. My earliest memories are going through First Communion classes at a Catholic church, and we would have class and then we would go to Mass. And the way that they would take attendance for the class was if you gave an offering. So each student had a stack of offering envelopes that had your name or a number for them to identify you. And if you put an offering in, it counted as if you went to class. And if you did not give, it's as if you didn't go to class, and that counts against you. And it might make it so that you have to wait longer before your first communion. So we didn't appreciate that.
Not a fan.
Not a fan at all. And honestly, we gave the bare minimum. It'd be my mom and I going, and we would put $1 in there, kind of as, I feel like, as an act of rebellion, like, here's your money. We're going to give you the bare minimum so that I can pass.
Almost like
this
resentfully.
Class. Yeah. We were not giving joyfully at all. So that's my earliest memories of that. Didn't like it. And I think now...
How did it change? Or maybe it didn't. Maybe you resent it every Sunday.
Well, after I did my first communion, we stopped going to church. So it really was kind of this is just something that you do. You have your kids baptized and you kind of check that off. And then years later, when it comes time for first communion, that's another box to check, and you go through the classes and you do it. But outside of that, it's not like going to church is a regular thing, a rhythm for us. So I stopped going for a while until I got invited again to go to a church in high school by a friend. And I don't remember if I was giving then. So I guess more of my memories are now as an adult, and I work for a church, so I get to see behind the scenes, like budgets and line items and where money is going. And I think I appreciate that St. Luke's and other churches I've been a part of make that information available to the congregation. So it feels really honest, like, here's the amount of money that's coming in and here's where it goes. There is no higher up organization that is funding this church. Like if we don't fund it, the physical church building, like it's not going to exist. We won't have lights on. We won't be able to pay our staff people. We won't have a pastor. Those things just won't happen. So I feel like that message of we need each other to do it is communicated more, or I've noticed it at least as an adult.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm hearing is it wasn't a part of your life, and then if what I heard was as an employee at a church, you're very aware of how the money is being stewarded and spent.
Yeah.
Now, I think that makes good sense. I also realize a tiny fraction of our congregation is on staff.
Yep. Yep.
so it seems like a big challenge. If for you, significant part of your giving was, as an employee, I see how frugal we are with everything and how much we stretch it. That's not necessarily an experience most of our people can have.
No, but I do think that we make an effort to let people know where we stand.
Sure.
And even just in the simple, like when we have that offering moment in a service to actually say there is no them, it's us.
Yeah.
Like this is us together doing this.
David, were you going to say something? Sorry.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
I mean, I agree. You know, when I give, it's still a, you know, I think about you guys, honestly, like, and the other staff people I work with. It's like, well, you know, it's easier to give to people than to an organization. But for me, the organization has faces in it. And that's something that's more true for me than for most of our members, because I spend, you know, most of my week here. But for our members still, you know, it's you're not giving directly into our pocketbook by any means, right? There's a system and everything's tracked and whatnot, but there's people behind it as well. So it matters. So.
And part of your question was like now.
Yeah. As a married couple, what does that look like? And also how, again, I don't want to be pry, but you know, some people give cash, some people give checks, some people transfer stocks, some people make a direct deposit or credit card. Yeah. What does that look like for you guys?
We actually give separately.
Okay.
We've had conversations. We have not had like a set amount that we've agreed upon as a couple or as a family to say this is what we're going to give together to the church. I do think that, I don't know what Adam's giving was like as a child or what it was for his family, but as an adult, I think he's been more hesitant to financially support a church. I think he really enjoys giving of his time. And to him, he's like, my time is valuable. It's more valuable than me putting money in. Or it's easier to give to specific things. So if we've got an event going on and we need to buy something last minute at the store, he'll pay for it and not get reimbursed. And that he considers that giving. So now that we give separately, we haven't really talked. Mine is automatic. So I've got it set up on our app, and every Sunday a certain amount goes out. And what's come up in conversation is that he sometimes drops something in the box. And I've actually seen him, and he will do it after a service, like after like it's been collecting. Like I'll just see him walk over when there's no one around, and he drops something in there. I don't know how much it is, but it's coming from him. And that's kind of been really neat to see. But like I said, we haven't said that as a family we're going to give a certain amount.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me and Charlotte, it's been a joint decision, probably with her. I think I said last time, kind of her driving in some ways more than me, and that's good because she's generous. And David, you mentioned how you thought of like the team or us, or I don't know that, and I don't think there's a better or worse or right or wrong. I don't know that I've really thought too much about like the goods and services received. And I don't hear you saying you're buying church or paying for a spiritual service. I do think a number of people do see it that way, and I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I think that might be a helpful, concrete motivation to say, oh, if I don't give, we can't afford a worship director. And I really like our worship director and the quality of worship, and I can volunteer and shovel snow and rake the leaves and buy donuts for the kids all year long, but that's not going to help staff a worship director position.
Can't direct a choir.
I don't, for me, maybe this is just like part of my heritage, but it's almost more if there's a better word for duty, just like that's just what you do. I think maybe it's connected to worship a little bit of I'm worshiping God by doing this, but I don't know that it's all that spiritual necessarily. For me, it's more. I think what motivates me is this feels like the right thing for me to do. I don't know if that resonates or if that feels weird or.
No, I mean, I ultimately agree. I just, it's kind of a layered thing for me. So on one layer, yeah, I think of the staff and the people. On the other hand, it is just a personal practice that I've been developing since I was about a teenager, and has been developed in me by others. So yeah, it's almost a reflex at this point in some ways, and regardless of whether or not I feel like it's weird when I go visit a church and I give automatically to St. Luke's, and that's just the way it works for me. I had a different habit at Trinity where I just wrote the check when I got so I need a habit is what I need, or else it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Not because I don't want to, but because I'm, disorganized. But I feel weird when I go to other churches. I'm still automatically giving to St. Luke's, and it's like the offering plate passes by. Like it feels like a disconnect for me to not do anything, Yeah. So it's strange. And I'm not saying that you have to give to other churches when you go. I'm not saying you have to give to anyone, really. But for me, it's become such a habitual thing that it's strange if it doesn't happen, which is not always how it was. And it may not always be how it is. I don't know. But for now, that's just where I'm at.
You mentioned that when they pass the plates, it can be weird. Before COVID, we passed offering plates here at St. Luke's. And then when the world shut down, we stopped that. And now we have a little black box in the lobby where some people will make a physical gift, whether it's cash or check, or maybe just an envelope that sort of represents their online giving, which I think is actually kind of a neat thing to do. That if you give online, that can become thoughtless and you forget about it. And so I haven't done this very consistently, but before COVID actually was, when the offering plate would be passed, I would take one of those offering envelopes and I would either write my name or write the amount, or sometimes just put the blank envelope, let it be reused again. But it was, no, I am participating in this, and this is an act of worship.
I kind of miss writing the check in a weird way. I like that moment. I don't do that anymore. So,
and what did you like about it?
Well, it was again, I need habits. Everyone needs habits. It's not like I'm special. I need habits, but I really need them, or else it doesn't happen. And I wasn't so good at giving at Trinity as pastor there, not from a lack of desire, but from a disorganization and trying to figure out the rest of my life as a single pastor in a small church, But the habit that eventually was built up was I get the paycheck. I think maybe I talked about this last time. I get the paycheck, looked at it, guessed what's 10% of this, or what's an appropriate amount. Again, 10% is not like a rule handed down from on high. It's a useful number, but it is useful in that it's both challenging, but also doesn't cripple the person typically. But that's not always true, one way or the other. Anyways, I would look, and I was at a position where I felt like I could give that 10 and write the check, bring it into the sanctuary, and lay it in the offering plate. Because if I tried to wait till Sunday, it wasn't going to happen, because I wasn't going to remember to bring the check up front, and the pastor's not going to walk out of the sanctuary mid-service to go, that's weird. Can't do that.
That's weird.
And so, and I didn't like running it to the person getting the checks at the end of service. That felt strange too. So it was kind of a private prayer moment almost, where I walk into the sanctuary and, this is where I worship and receive God's gifts. And yeah, that was, and I learned that by watching Pastor Steve Nicodemus, who was still giving to Trinity even though he wasn't working there anymore or even going there. And he would come in with a check into the sanctuary on Monday, first Monday of the month, and bring one in. I don't know if he still does that, but I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a neat little moment for him. So, yeah.
And I like that you just mentioned, I learned this concrete, embodied, and yet spiritual practice from an actual person, which I think is good and true for so many things in life, but I don't know, my experience, I feel like I kind of stumbled into my practices here because we didn't talk about it as a family. I don't know what my parents did. I mean, I can speculate. I guess I could just talk to my dad too. But I don't know what they did or what he does now.
I feel like with the offering plate, there's a social layer with it too. Like when it is getting passed, watching other people put their gift in. If I don't, I feel like it feels strange. And also, if this is something that I believe in, like I want to be part of this too, I also want to contribute. And so it feels weird to sit it out and let other people contribute and be part of this bigger thing that I say I want to be a part of. And yet I'm letting that plate, so to speak, just kind of pass by. And I'm saying, well, you guys got it. I'm not going to be a part of it. So it feels strange not to do that. And I mean, I know we don't pass the plate anymore, but that same kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing in that also, Brenda, is there are times when guilt can be very unhelpful and manipulative. And there's other times where we have a conscience for a reason. Yeah. And if I'm a part of a thing and other people are doing their part and I'm just kind of free riding, like that probably shouldn't feel comfortable. I don't know. Like we, as a staff, we went on this dragon boat thing a while ago, which was super fun and exhausting. And
Say that was a workout.
I'm still sore.
More exhausting.
Yeah. My butt hurt for days.
Yeah.
I'm bringing a cushion next time. There will probably be no next time, but it was fun at times. But it was just us in the boat. Like
boot camp.
And also we had I don't know what the person in the front who was yelling at us, what their title was. The person who was yelling at us for 2 hours out on the water.
Dragon Master.
Harder, faster. And they would have us like do it and like, okay, front half of the boat. Okay, that was good. Back half. Ooh, you can feel the difference, right? That was not good.
That's why I regretted sitting at the very front. She's like, reach forward. I'm like, this is as far as my arms can reach. Like, I can't go more.
David, you were in the back
half. I could do
half.
a whole podcast for that. I was in the back half. And I just got to say, after like the third time, I'm like, ooh, back half wasn't so good. I was like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to keep sabotaging it so the front half can keep demonstrating to me how it's done right.
So yeah, we could have a whole series on dragon boating based on our one experience. But what I was thinking was, as a team, if we were actually trying to get somewhere, and if somebody was just sitting it out, it'd be very obvious. Like, dude, get your oar in the water, get to work. I'm sweating over here. And even if you were trying to hide, and even if you could successfully hide, like that shouldn't sit well with you.
I remember like one of my earliest experiences with that was I was in Boy Scouts and being a young guy and realizing that like setting up camp in the rain in the dark is a miserable thing. It's a common thing if you're camping a lot in the Northwest throughout the year, but it's a miserable thing. But you did not want to be one of the like 3 younger scouts who wasn't participating in that, because social pressure exists and young boys are kind of, they're not going to give the social pressure. They're not going to hold back. And some of that's not healthy. Some of that's not. But some of it is kind of healthy to realize like, hey, there's like this has to happen. You want to have a tent tonight, you're going to have to help set it up. And so yeah, there is that mix of social pressure. Of course, like anything with humans, it's broken by sin. So it can be awful. And like, the paying $1 for, making sure you can have communion. Maybe that came from a good idea, but it feels like, kind of manipulative. And, what sort of social pressure is that? I don't know.
Yeah. And then, you look at the budget side of things and, hey, those cups and wines and wafers, it actually costs money.
Yes.
And that's weird because offering is not buying spiritual goods and services, at least in my understanding of it. I'm not just paying the utilities when I make my offering. I'm worshiping the Lord as the creator and sustainer and provider. And I'm part of a community and I'm loving my neighbor well. Both in terms of like the staff, but also, I hope and expect even when I'm in my 70s and 80s and my kids are on the other side of the world and I don't have grandkids here, I want my offering to support the Sunday school so that a next generation knows the love of Jesus, because I'm some old guy and they don't want to hear from me. But I can help fund the curriculum and the resources and the arts and crafts and the snacks and a staff position who's going to train and coordinate the volunteers so that these kids know Jesus. So that feels different than, I want to make sure there's a pastor who's going to do my funeral, so let's keep somebody on retainer. Like, it's not like there is a sense that I'm receiving this thing, and so I'm going to participate.
I've seen that attitude before too.
Yeah.
People have different reasons for, there's something far thinking about that exact thought process, which is like, well, if I don't give, there's not going to be anyone to bury me. And it feels somewhat self-centered, but at the same time, it's also like thinking outside of just immediacy and tomorrow, which is interesting.
But to take that even further, I mean, the alternative, if people chose not to give, I mean, eventually there is no money to keep the lights on. Eventually there is no building. And so you might still be able to gather in some places as smaller groups, but we can't gather the way we are now.
Yeah, I think ministry would look very different.
Yeah, it would look different.
Yeah. I also acknowledge certain areas of my life, I feel, I don't know, the drive to participate differently. So Charlotte and we give 10% of our income as an offering to the church. And that's a beautiful thing. And I love that we do that. I also listen to the radio most days of the week, and I listen to this delightful jazz station, Jazz 24, and they're doing their, November pledge drive. And at no point have I been like stirred to give to this thing. And so I'm receiving it. And I think part of it for me is it's that is just a goods and service. It's not an act of faith necessarily, but there is some, and there's also not a real concrete community. I don't know who the listeners are. I'm not listening with a group of people. Like if I was part of a jazz club with 12 of us or 50 of us that just love jazz music, I think I would feel more compelled to participate in the funding of it, as opposed to, this is just a thing I kind of like. And if it went away, that's fine. I'd like it. I'm glad it's there.
But even the radio hosts, you don't even know what they look like.
Yeah,
like,
this is not a real person to me. I've not met them. I don't listen to it in community, and it's not an act of worship. So maybe I'm just justifying being cheap, but it's weird because when it comes to church, I give 10% of my income. That's a big thing. And with this radio station, zero ever. My whole life combined, zero.
I just recently had an interesting experience with that. I have a YouTube channel I've been watching since 2016. It's a weekly. They started with World War I, and they do what happened in World War I this week 100 years ago. And now it's World War II. What happened in World War II this week? I think it's like 77 years ago. Didn't match up perfectly. I've been watching that channel for almost a decade at this point, and I have given them nothing. And they were making an ask last video I was watching, and my wife pops up behind me. She's like, you might want to just like give maybe $5 a month to this thing. Like, you use this so much and you get so much benefit out of it. And I don't know. Yeah. It's just like, why have I not done that with this, like, I've received a good, they put in a lot of work, and I've been entertained and learned a lot. So but yet the church thing was a habit that was built in me beforehand. It doesn't really compute directly in the same way, I guess is what I'm.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of wrestling aloud, is that it's, for me, it's not just the goods and services received, that in community, kind of feeling like an owner, like I'm invested in this. Going back to my track club, we have a registration fee every year, or each season, so twice a year. I don't know, it might be $100, $90. So $90 or $100 in the fall, $100 in the spring. And then each race costs $10 or $15. And that, again, nobody's getting rich off that. It's just the timing mats and the bib numbers and the flags and the cones and the cost to rent the park. It costs money to put on a race for 600 kids. So it's like $100 for each season, $10, $15 for each race. We have to buy a uniform. And I'm one of, maybe there's 8 coaches, but most of the parents don't like volunteer in that sense. So it'd be easy, I think, for me to say, I don't need to pay. I'm volunteering. I'm here every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for hours. But I also don't hesitate for that $10 or the $100 each season, because I think it's personal. Like, these are my people. It's not just like with that YouTube. Like, they're gifting something to the world anonymously, and if you'd like to say thanks, you can. Yeah. That feels different, that impersonal. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a switch. So thinking about it in a church context, so going from being just a receiver to more active, or like you're part of it. Because I think people for a while will church hop, like go and visit and see if they like it, see if they feel like they can connect with people there. And so it doesn't feel like it's your church, like you're not part of it yet, like you are just receiving at that point. But at what point do you switch to, I'm not just coming in and sitting and listening and taking it in and receiving and walking away and like, that was a good Sunday morning, but that's as far as it goes, to no, these are my people. Like, I am part of this bigger thing. And so I want to help. I want to do something and not just receive.
Yeah, I imagine there are probably books written on this, and somebody listening, or if this was shared in different circles, they might go, "You guys are idiots, just read this book." I haven't researched this, but just as I'm hearing that, Brenda, I bet we could come up with this sort of taxonomy of engagement of like, there's an observer who's just watching, then maybe somebody who's receiving, of, okay, it's more than just I'm checking it out, but I enjoy the music, or I got something out of the talk, or I dropped my kids off for an hour and I got a break. Or you're teaching my kids to be good boys and girls, or you're teaching them spiritual truths. So like, maybe some people come looking to receive, maybe some people kind of observe, then they receive, maybe at some point they participate. Like, I've been on the receiving end as a parent for a long time. I can give a half hour, an hour at this thing. But then almost moving towards like owner of, oh, this is my church. It's like I say, there's no they, it's just us. So I don't know what that looks like to help people progress through that intentionally. But from where I'm sitting, behind the scenes, sitting at the in the corner office, so to speak, I realize there is no great like conspiracy behind this. There is no infrastructure. It's just us. And that's kind of alarming at times to realize, oh, it's just us. It's just the people here. And I think it could be easy, especially the larger the church, to assume they have people for that. And I think the smaller the church, you realize it's just us. And we're kind of depending on your perspective, a pretty middle-sized, larger church. And so it's understandable that people might think in terms of volunteering or financial supporting, they're probably fine if they don't need me.
Right.
Yeah. Help people feel like owners.
Yeah, I think, at
or see it. I mean, that's the reality.
Trinity, we'd have 30 people on a Sunday, and sometimes that was a good Sunday, depending on the season. And a lot of them were older, and it's no secret, but perhaps our viewers don't know. Typically, that's our givers are typically the older folks, more consistent givers. I mean, we last year when we did a similar series, we talked about that.
Yeah,
it's a significant drop off after.
Yeah, for U.S. charitable giving, whether it's churches or nonprofits or anything like that, kind of the upper end. It was, who's older than baby boomers?
Greatest Generation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's still a few of those around, but
they're like 10%.
Yeah, they were at 10%. Baby boomers were around 8-ish, and then
it was lower than 8. I think it was like 6.
And then it dropped precipitously. Every generation was less and less and less.
Yeah, and some of that might just be Greatest Generation and baby boomers might have a little bit more financial stability, and who knows what happens when Gen X and Gen Y get older. But as we talked about, like the giving doesn't just spontaneously start one day. And I don't think it spontaneously starts just because you have more money. necessarily. And that's not to say that, like, as a person who's, as I shared my low, like discussing budgeting, that's not to say that where you're at financially can't make a difference. It does make a difference, but I don't think, like, it's not just waiting to hit like a certain number that then it's going to happen, because the money's not the only part. It's the thought process and the discipline behind it. So, yeah. So, but like at Trinity, 30 people, but mostly older, we had pretty much everyone was giving, and the church was in a really good spot financially, at least for an organization its size with one full-time employee. Right. Yeah. And that was something I was always grateful for, and I think learned and felt convicted of in some ways too. It's like, okay, like there is nowhere to hide, and we had some folks who came and didn't give at all, but like it wasn't like anyone was resentful of them. It's we were there to serve. Yeah. It was interesting to see that sort of small ownership type community. Yeah.
So both of you work with younger people at St. Luke's, David with the youth and Brenda with the children. I don't know, does this conversation prompt anything, or whether action items or even questions of what? So this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And my experience is parents aren't necessarily teaching their kids. And so how much less are other random adults in church teaching other people's kids about finances and giving in the church. And so if this doesn't just happen, and we can't assume people are getting it intuitively or even at home, I don't know, how can the church walk with our young people and our families in this? What are you, I'm curious what you two are thinking in terms of the young people at our church, from Sunday school all the way up through young adults going off to college or military service or first jobs. Whether that benefits or blesses St. Luke's in the future, or some other organization, or even just that person's heart as somebody who has generosity. How do we equip and get kind of ahead of some of this stuff?
It's interesting. Some of our kids in Sunday school will bring an offering, and I don't know that we've done a great job of explaining what that is at their level, or why their dollar or their 15 cents that they bring, or their pennies do. We've had things where the money that they bring supports a certain cause, and this year it's been our bag program, Bridging a Gap, having food for some students in the community that wouldn't have that food maybe on the weekends. But I don't know that they're thinking about that each week when they bring their money, or if it's just they've been told by their parents, like, you bring something to Sunday school, like you bring something and put it in the basket, because they're not getting a prize. It's not like they bring $1 and we give them a sticker and great job, you brought it. We're not doing that, at least not now. And yet week after week, different students will bring $1. My favorite is when it's change, when I have to count out the pennies and the dimes, because they were saving that, or, how much money can a 2-year-old have or a 3-year-old have? But what they do have, they're bringing to class, and it makes them happy to give it to their teacher and put it in the basket. So I don't know, it's neat to see them do that, but I don't know what's going through their mind when they're doing it, or if it's just a parent saying, here you go.
Yeah. It seems like there's probably value when if a person knows what they're supporting or why they're doing it, and yet there's probably also plenty of value in life of routines and habits are formative, sometimes in and of themselves, and do the right thing whether or not you feel like it. Or even, I think about exercise. I might not have a race on my calendar, and I might not see how a particular workout serves this goal, but get out there and put in the miles. It's good for me, even if I don't measure the weight loss or the cardiovascular improvement that week. It's the right thing to do. Dave, what youth? Yeah, teenagers. Some have zero money, and the ones that have some, it's probably 100% disposable. They don't have any bills. Yep. maybe they do. Some of them do, but
some of them do. Cars, gas, depends on whether.
Cell phone.
Yeah, cell phone. It depends on how things work out. But yeah, to be honest, I haven't really talked much about money outside of we need to fund retreats, and this is why. So like, and yeah, they work every once in a while at church events to raise money for themselves to be able to go on retreat, which is good because ultimately I want the youth to be able to go whether or not their family can afford it. So when they help out for one thing and then the church in turn kind of pays for extra retreat stuff, that's good. But that's not really what we're talking about here. There is a connection there of, time matters and giving time to the church matters and is beneficial, but there's not really that extra step of it might be beneficial in a way in which I never know or realize, and this is just something should be doing. So I've considered what that could look like for youth, talking about it. Obviously I think we could challenge and talk about it in a way that just be frank with them. Like this is sharing what my habit is and why my habit is this way and how that habit got started, and sharing a bit of that story. For me, I never gave in youth group when I was a youth here, but I gave on Sundays in part because of what I learned from my church and in part what I learned from my family. And I think that would be the habit to kind of try to bring them to. And, it's not... don't give everything. Don't completely.
Don't be an idiot.
It's okay. Learn, enjoy some of your money and use it, and that's great because that's you're not being more pious or more holy by this practice, but it is a good practice and it's beneficial in your spiritual life. So yeah, I think just a frank discussion and bringing some opportunities. Perhaps how can I consider bringing in this our drive to raise money for the mortgage to the youth. About as exciting of a thing as you could talk about at youth group is mortgages.
But I'd be curious what they would have to say if you asked them, like, what do you think about giving? Like, I don't know if you have or if you haven't, or if you watch your family do it, or if you have your own money that you put into it, but what their thoughts are on it, if they've thought about it, or if they've just kind of thought that's something you do as an adult when you have a job and everything.
And then you realize as you get older that there is no flip switch that happens from childhood and teenagehood to being an adult. And like that doesn't just happen one day.
John Mayer song. There's no such thing as the real world. Yeah. Like there is no like, oh, now I'm living in the real world.
Yeah.
No, that's it. Like there is no such thing. Like it's always this.
It's always this.
Yeah.
There is no switch with giving or living, or someday I'm going to pray, or someday I'm going to read my Bible, or someday I'm going to volunteer, or someday I'm going to give. All we have is right now.
Yeah.
I guess I would hope folks listening to this. It's weird, by the way, being on a podcast, because I realize there's people listening, but I'm just talking, like, I'm just enjoying this conversation. Like, oh yeah, I guess we could talk to the people who are listening. If you have young people in your lives, kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, and especially if St. Luke's is part of your life, hand them one of the Better Together or Forward Together envelopes and say, hey, I'm doing this. I want you to consider being part of it. And we're not keeping score. If you are giving and you are, there's a tax benefit for certain things, you can sort of get credit in that sense, put your name on the envelope, but nobody's going to love you more or less. Nobody sees, Pastor Dave and I, Brenda, we don't see what people are giving. But to our teenagers, our young kids, be part of this. You're the church. It's not just your church, but you are the church. We're in this together. I'd be curious, David, also, I think the teenagers probably have a higher capacity to think through money than our little kids. We went to Panda Express last night for a special dinner out, and my 13-year-old has started noticing job postings and what the starting wage is for different positions. Like, $15 an hour, $20 an hour for doing that, and so starting to conceptualize labor, how much work goes into earning a certain amount. So I think that's probably true of a lot of our kids, but maybe even just helping them process through Brenda, you talking about transparency earlier. Where does money go at St. Luke's, and what does it actually cost to do all the things that we do?
Yeah.
And maybe we can dig into that next time, but just thinking about the youth, let's share a couple of these numbers here. So our church budget, we've got, I don't know, 270-ish, 280-ish families who are here, official members, participants, and our budget breaks down to $82 per family per week. If every family gave $82 a week, we are fully funded as an organization. And those $82 breaks down to 47 and change goes to staff, which ends up breaking down to $4 per staff person per family per week. So if the youth like having a designated staff person, like a youth pastor, that's $4 a week. And for $4 a week, you will have somebody to visit you in the hospital and pray with you and teach with you and show up for hours on a Tuesday night and take you out to coffee. That costs $4 a week. Oh, and if you want our youth room, we have a space for Sunday school and youth and church and parking lot. That's $24 a week. If every family gave $24 a week, that covers all the landscaping, all the HVAC repairs, all the mortgage, all the spaces that we use for all the different ministries. Missions is $6 a week. That goes to things like HUNA and her Braille ministry and supporting local organizations. And then down to the smallest kind of nuts and bolts, books and curriculum and communion bread and wine and wafers we talked about earlier, and choir materials and the licenses to project lyrics, all that. It's $3.50 a week, a family. So, there's no great conspiracy here. There's no giant fund of ministry money coming into these things. It's all self-supported, as Brenda was saying earlier. But I bet the youth could conceptualize a lot of those things to say, hey, what do you think it costs to pay taxes and, all the upkeep for all of these things? Yeah. And by the way, we don't have to have these things. We don't have to have a parking lot. We don't have to have a building. We don't have to have staff. Ministry would look different if we chose to do that. And how we choose to give or not give is making that choice eventually. I don't know. Dave, do you think any of those numbers would connect with kids more than others?
Yeah. I think they would probably be, one thing I don't think you really get as a kid quite yet is I think they'd be shocked at staff versus ministry programs, because ministry programs is the thing that they directly feel. The
Doritos, the water bottles.
Yeah. But it's no, it's the staff and it's the paying for the people to put on the ministry programs and to be here and to do all those things that you talked about that. So I think some of that would, and also these small changes that you put down here. So you need to talk about them. But a monthly increase of $1 and what that adds up to if every church family were to do that. When I was young, those numbers always kind of impacted because you see that little changes made over big groups of people matter quite a lot. And that's getting to part of this Forward Together series, which is, as you keep saying, there is no they. We are all in this together, and every one of us pushing, helps make it go. I was thinking back to the Fall Festival. Is that what we called it? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
You got it.
I forgot the name. So, but the thing that we did,
cakewalk, costumes,
all that. Yeah.
Halloween time.
How quick we cleaned up afterwards.
That was amazing.
Everyone pitched in a little bit.
Less than 30 minutes. Yeah.
It didn't feel overwhelming to any single person, at least as far as I could tell. Yeah.
Yeah, we were handing out brooms out of the closet and little dustpans, bigger brooms, smaller brooms, people taking out trash, replacing liners. Yep. We had hundreds of people here for an event, and ate chili and hot dogs and popcorn and water, and we had cake walk. So there were 66 books of the Bible taped onto the floor. There are trash cans all around. Yeah, and in less than 30 minutes, it was spotless.
Yeah.
As if we hadn't even been there.
Yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
that old kind of saying, many hands make light work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've heard your mom, David, say before, like, if like everybody's little bit matters, it does make a difference. I think some people might hesitate and say, I don't have very much to give. And so it's almost kind of an embarrassment. Like, I'd rather not give at all until I can give whatever number they have in mind. But really, I mean, when there's a lot of families that are thinking that same way, like, it makes a difference in the kind of negative way. So if you look at it as like, maybe it is $1, maybe it is $0.25, all of that does add up throughout the year, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. So, we've used tithe as a way of describing a 10% of income, which is a beautiful thing. I don't want to minimize that, but $15 a week.
That's
So if and I realize some families are already kind of at the upper limits, but just as an example, if you're giving nothing and you gave $15 a week, and let's say every family did the same thing. If every person, every household in the pews, whether it's a family of 5 or a single person, if every person gave $15 more a week, that's a full-time staff position.
That's significant. Yeah.
I said $15 a month. I said a week. $15 a month.
Oh.
Yeah. No, if every family gave $15 more a week, that is $250,000.
Wow.
Like that,
Yeah.
that we pay off our mortgage in 4 years.
Wow.
If every family gave $15 more of a week, we pay off our mortgage in 4 years instead of 20.
Gosh.
So even $15 a month, if every household, if you're giving $0 and you could give $15 more a month, and so could everyone else, that is a full-time staff position.
yeah.
Anyway, so let's just say, a percentage, great. If you can give 1% of your income, 5, 10%, 15, 20, great. But maybe it's $5 a month or $5 a week. $5. If every family gave $5 more a week, that's $73,000. Now, the flip side is also scarily true. Things are hard and things are tight and expenses go up. If every family just said, I'm just going to cut back $5, that's a full-time staff position plus that we have to cut. Your $5 down matters too. Like that's a little bit goes a long way when it's spread out over 300 families.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's I hope none of this sounds like scare tactics or pressure. It's just trying to be real. Like, this is just what it is. We don't have to do ministry this way, but if we like how we're doing ministry, this is what it takes.
Right.
I don't know. Brenda, any final thoughts?
No, it's just really interesting to hear what prompted each of you to give originally too. Just thinking about that for me, and then like maybe it would be really good to have a more sit-down conversation with Adam. Like, okay, let's look at this together versus right now we're doing it separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, any takeaways for you?
I'm just thinking about, I'm thinking about our teenagers here at the church, and sharing with them my experience, and also, however I was taught was obviously effective for me, because my relationship with giving is something that I feel is positive in my life, and it's been something that I've been thankful for a habit that's been formed in me. So thinking about, how can I do it in a way, and I think, Brenda, you're right, having them share too, of like, this is a non-confrontational conversation. This isn't a guilt trip. This isn't me trying to, how can I buy a Mercedes-Benz when all's said and done? All right. Like, I know that's not going to happen. Like, that's, but setting them up for wherever they go, and in any ministries that they might be part of in the future, how are we building up people who are going to be gifts to those places and those ministries and those people? And maybe it's not even just typically at church. Just generosity is something that we maybe feel is like a natural trait that people just have or don't have, but I really don't think it is. I think people are more inclined to it than others, but I really think it's a built up habitual trait. And so even if it's not about tithing to the church, just what does it mean to start thinking about, like, you have the capability to be a generous person.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you need to give 10% of your income. But that does, like, I want to challenge you to consider what that looks like for your life. Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of Arthur Brooks is a professor at Harvard, I think.
Yeah. I think so.
Who studies happiness. And I don't think he necessarily has any, I don't know what his faith may or may not be, but I've listened to a few things of his, and I've got a couple books on my wish list. I'm meaning to read that. But one of the things I remember that he's got sort of just objectively, here are the things that are going to make you a happier person. And it's like community and having a higher purpose, and there's, working hard. And one of them, I think, is like giving away, like being generous. And I think he would probably describe this from some like evolutionary point of view, that when you're able to give more, it helps you feel secure. Like, I'm so well off, I'm able to give. But he made the point that it's not that happier people necessarily give more, but it's causative, that giving actually will help your like own just personal satisfaction in life, that there's something humanly true that it's good for us to be generous. Anyways, you mentioned the youth of yes, it's good to support the church. It's also just good for us to be generous, which is not surprising. That's who God is, right? Yeah. God has made us in his image, and at least as Lutheran Christians, the defining thing of who God is he's sacrificial and generous. Like, that's the gospel.
Compassionate.
Yeah. So thinking of others and giving of yourself, it shouldn't surprise us that feels right.
No.
It's the very heart of God. So, well, thanks, you two, for taking time today. Listeners, viewers, thanks for taking time. I hope this isn't a weird conversation. I hope it doesn't feel like a bullying conversation. Part of the reason I invited David and Brenda to the table with the microphone today is this is the stuff we talk about anyway. We're constantly processing stuff on staff and as friends and family in Jesus, and go, man, I think it'd be good for the church or people beyond these walls to be part of this conversation. And so that's why we started the podcast. I hope this has been a good conversation for you to listen to, and I really hope it is a prompt for you to start a conversation. Adam and Brenda maybe get to have a sit down. David described Greta like lurking behind as you're watching YouTube. She said popped up or something like that. It sounded very startling to me. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, where'd you come from?
I'm just watching World War II a week ago. But yeah.
So conversations are happening, and I hope this encourages you, even if there's a hard topic or a potentially weird topic. It doesn't have to be weird. Or you can start by saying, hey, this might be weird, but it matters. Can we talk about this? So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and keep the conversation going. Till next time.
That's the end of the episode, but we want to continue the conversation. Continue the conversation by sharing this episode, subscribing, or leaving a review. Connect with us on Instagram at 2414 podcast. Connect with us through email at 2414@stlukes-church.com. Or best of all, keep the conversation going by inviting someone to process with you, so that you can each walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. If you happen to be in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington, stop by on a Sunday morning and say hi. 2414 is a podcast produced by St. Luke's Lutheran Church in Federal Way, Washington. To find more content, discover upcoming opportunities to connect in person, or to support the show, head on over to stlukes-church.com. Thanks for walking with us.